The lake has been here longer than the hold, longer than the kingdom's name, longer than anything I could claim ownership of. My family built on its shore 4 generations back because someone understood that a body of water that old has a quality of patience that is useful to a governing line. It does not hurry. It does not perform. It simply reflects what is there and lets the rest sink. I have been grateful for that quality more than I can say. 7 years ago in the late autumn, my mate Kayla died. She had been ill for 2 seasons, slowly, then quickly, in the way of those things, and by the time it was over I had been preparing for it for long enough that the grief arrived not as a sudden collapse but as a settling, a lowering of something that had been held at height for too long. I was not destroyed. I was simply changed, the way a lake changes when the season turns. The same water, the same depth, but a different quality of light. I governed. I attended to Lachvan's business, its borders, its seasonal councils, its wolves. I was a functioning alpha king. My senior wolves will tell you this is true. What they will tell you more quietly if you ask them in the right way is that I was present in the way a standing stone is present, visible, fixed, and not quite alive. My daughter Sira would tell you the same thing, except she would not be quiet about it. Sira and I had a falling out 3 years ago. I will not pretend it was her fault, it was mine, or rather it was the fault of the managed distance, which had by then become its own kind of cruelty. She said things that were true. I said things that were defensive, which in retrospect is a way of saying things that are also true but offered in the worst possible spirit. She went to the outer settlement. We corresponded. We did not see each other for 2 years. She came back for the season's council with her chosen mate, Davin, who is a solid and decent wolf from the western border settlements, and who I had not previously met. She came back with the hesitation of someone who is not sure of their welcome, and I made sure the welcome was certain, because I may have been a standing stone for 7 years, but I was not a fool. She also brought Davin's widowed sister, Marin, who had come because Sira asked her to and who had, as I understood it, no other pressing commitment for the season. I noticed her on the first day the way you notice the quality of light changing, not with attention, not deliberately, but with the peripheral awareness of something different in the room. She was quiet, not the quiet of someone withholding, but the quiet of someone who does not feel the need to fill space. She set her bag in the eastern guest room, and the second thing she did. The first was to thank the hold keeper by name, which she had apparently learned in the courtyard before coming inside, was to ask where the hold's injured animals were usually brought. The hold keeper told her about the sick room off the eastern courtyard. She thanked him again and went to look at it. I watched this from the gallery above the main hall, and did not examine why I was watching. The mate mark on my wrist was cool. It had been cool for 7 years. The temperature of a stone in deep water, not cold exactly, not painful, just present in the way of things that have been still a long time. It is important that you understand the warmth when it came, did not come when I saw her. It came 2 days later. I was in the East Gallery, reviewing the season's border agreements, and I heard her voice from the courtyard below, not the words, just the voice, speaking to old Ferris, who is the largest wolf in the hold and who does not approach strangers and who was, from the sound of it, sitting at her feet while she told him something about the angle of the morning sun on the lake. The warmth happened between one breath and the next, faint, tentative, the temperature of held hands on a cold morning. I set the border agreements down. I did not go to the courtyard. I picked the agreements back up and finished reviewing them. But I sat there for a long time after I finished, with my wrist held still against the table, feeling the warmth that had not been there in 7 years, and not knowing what to call it yet. The season at Lachvan runs 8 weeks. This one had only just begun. Marin had a way of existing in the hold that was unlike anyone I had encountered in a long time. She did not adjust herself for the Alpha King's presence, not rudely, not pointedly, simply as a matter of practice. the way someone who has been self-sufficient for a long time has stopped calibrating their manner to the nearest authority in the room. She was polite. She was warm with Sira. She was good with the hold's animals, which I observed from a distance on several occasions, and with the hold's 2 injured wolves, which I observed from a somewhat closer distance on one occasion when I had come to the eastern courtyard on entirely unrelated business and found her there. The wolf whose foreleg had been torn in the hunting ground 3 seasons ago, and who had not let anyone approach it since, a great gray female named Ash, was lying with her head in Marin's lap. Marin was running her fingers along the scar tissue at the leg's shoulder joint, slowly, and with the attention of someone learning a story through touch. She did not look up when I stopped in the courtyard doorway. She said without turning, "She lets you touch it if you approach from the right side and you don't make eye contact first." I came closer. I had not been in the eastern courtyard in 2 seasons. "I know," I said. "She's been wary since it happened." "Not wary," Marin said. "Careful, there's a difference." She looked up then. Her eyes had the quality of someone who says what they mean and doesn't add anything extra. She knows what hurt her and she's decided what she'll allow near it. That's not fear, that's sense. I looked at the wolf. Ash looked back at me with the mild suspicion she had worn for 2 seasons. Then she looked at Marin. Then she closed her eyes. "She likes you," I said. "She's practical," Marin said. "I don't ask her for anything she hasn't decided to give." I stayed in the eastern courtyard longer than I had planned to. This is the most honest thing I can say about that morning. I stayed because the conversation was, the word that comes to me is clean. Not careful, not managed. Clean, the way the lake is clean, it does not perform for you. It simply is what it is, and you can see to the bottom. My wrist was warm. The Seasons Council met in the 2nd week. Sira's presence was formal and necessary. She had held the outer settlement's voice on the border question for 2 years, and the council needed her, and she performed it with the competence that had always been hers when she chose to use it. Davin sat beside her with the solid reliability of a wolf who understands his role. Marin did not attend the council, having no standing in Lochfin's pack business, and I noticed her absence the way you notice a sound that has been present for long enough that its absence is legible. After the council, Sira found me in the library. She did not speak for a moment. She looked at me in the particular way she had looked at me from childhood, the direct assessment that had always been more her mother's than mine, and then she said, "You've been to the eastern courtyard 4 times this week." "I'm aware of the hold's facilities," I said. "You haven't been to the eastern courtyard in 2 seasons," she said. "I know because I asked the hold keeper." I set down the document I had been pretending to read. "You asked the hold keeper." I needed to know if things had changed. A pause. "Have they?" She was not asking about the eastern courtyard. We had not talked with this kind of directness in 3 years, and the fact that she was offering it now, carefully, with the tentative quality of someone not certain of the ground, was its own form of answer about how much had changed for both of us. "I don't know yet," I said. She looked at me for a long moment. Something moved in her face, relief, perhaps, or the precursor to it. "She doesn't know," Sira said, "about the mark, or she doesn't know anything about the bond traditions. She's Western settlement. They do things differently there." "I know," I said. "She came because I asked her to," Sira said. Not because of this." "I know that too." A pause. "Are you all right?" she asked. It was the first time she had asked me that in 3 years, and the simplicity of it, the directness, without the old weight of our falling out in the way, landed with the force of something I had not realized I was waiting for. "I'm finding out," I said. She nodded. She left the library. I sat for a long time with the document that I was not reading and the warmth on my wrist that was becoming, by small increments, something I could not pretend was anything other than what it was. I had made a bargain with my grief in the autumn 7 years ago. The bargain was, I will govern. I will be present in the ways that are required of me. I will not be absent in my duty. In return, I will not reach for anything else. I will not want. I will let the lake have the quality of patience that I no longer have, and I will hold the distance, and the distance will keep everything manageable. It had been a reasonable bargain for 7 years. It was not a reasonable bargain anymore. I understood this on the night of the third week, when I found myself standing at the eastern window of the great hall long after the rest of the hold had retired, looking out at the lake in the dark, thinking about what Marin had said about Ash. She knows what hurt her, and she's decided what she'll allow near it. That's not fear. That's sense. I had been calling it sense for 7 years. I went to the eastern courtyard the next morning without a reason I was willing to name. Marin was there, as she often was in the mornings. She rose early, I had learned, and went to the animals before the hold properly woke. She was checking the wing of a hunting bird that had been brought in 2 weeks ago with a broken joint, her hands moving with the careful precision of someone who has done this a very long time. I said nothing for a moment. She did not look up. He's almost ready, she said. Another week, maybe less, he wants to go back. How do you know? He looks at the sky differently when he wants to go, like he's measuring it. She finished the check and set the bird gently back on its perch. Then she looked at me. You're here early. I wanted to see the lake, I said. It's the same lake it was yesterday. Yes, I said, but I find I want to see it anyway. She looked at me with that clear, direct look, the one that did not add anything extra. I had been cataloging what I felt in her presence for 3 weeks now, trying to name the components. The warmth in my wrist that I understood. What I understood less well was the specific quality of ease, the way the managed distance that had been my governing mode for 7 years simply did not apply when she was in the room. Not because she broke through it. She hadn't tried. It simply did not arise. I said, you came because Sira asked you. Yes. You had no reason to come to Lachfin on your own account. I had no other pressing plans for the season, she said. Sira needed a companion for the travel, and I haven't been this far north in some years. The lake is different from the western water. She looked out at it. It's older looking. It is older, I said. The geology of this valley is. I stopped. I'm about to tell you more about the geology of this valley than anyone has asked to hear in a long time. Something moved in her face that was not quite a smile and was not quite not one. I don't mind, she said. I like knowing what a place is made of. So I told her. We stood in the eastern courtyard in the early light, and I told her about the lake bed and the rock layers, and the way the water was fed from an underground source so cold it had not changed temperature in recorded history. She asked questions that were precise and actual, not performed interest, real curiosity, and at the end she said, so it's been here exactly as it is for longer than anyone can measure. Yes, I said. And you built on it, she said. My family did. And the lake didn't mind. Lakes don't mind things, I said. Some of them do, she said. You can tell. The ones that mind have a different quality about them. They push back when you go in. They don't let you see to the bottom. This one lets you see. She looked at the water. This one has been patient with you. I stood there for a moment with the warmth steady on my wrist, and the early light on the lake, and the bird behind us looking at the sky, with the measuring look of something that knows it is almost ready to go back. Yes, I said, it has. The falling out with Sira healed in the 4th week. Not dramatically. There was no single conversation that resolved it, no scene with weeping and forgiveness. It healed the way frozen ground heals in spring, by degrees, incrementally, until one morning you step on it, and it gives the way living ground gives instead of the hard give of something still locked. She came to me after dinner one night and sat across from me at the hall table and said, I know I said some things that were unfair. You said some things that were true, I said. Both things can be true, she said. Yes, I said, both things were true. We sat with that for a moment. I've missed the lake, she said. I didn't realize how much until I came back. You can come back, I said. The lake is here, so am I. She looked at me with the assessment that was her mother's, and then she looked out at the water, and we sat in the kind of quiet that is not managed distance, but its opposite, the quiet of two people who have found each other again and are letting the finding settle. Marin passed through the hall on her way to the eastern rooms, gave us a brief nod. She was good at not interrupting things that needed their own air, and Sierra watched her go. She lost her mate 4 years ago, Sierra said. She doesn't talk about it much, but she's been better this season than she's been in some time. I watched the doorway where Marin had been. She has a way of, I stopped. Yes, Sierra said. She does. In the 5th week, the wolf Ash was injured again, not her old wound, something new. She had gone into the eastern forest alone, which the wolves sometimes did, and caught her shoulder on a fallen branch in the dark. She came back to the hold in the early morning, limping but not badly, and went directly to the eastern courtyard. I was told this by the hold keeper at the second bell. I went to the eastern courtyard. Marin was already there. I stopped in the doorway. She was kneeling beside Ash, working by the light of 2 candles she had brought from the sick room, her hands moving with the economy of someone who has assessed the situation and begun the work before anyone else has finished understanding the situation. Ash was still, more still than I had ever seen her, the particular stillness of an animal that has decided to trust completely. Marin's voice was low and continuous, the way you talk to something frightened, not the words but the sound, the steadiness of it. I did not speak. I stood in the doorway, and the mate mark on my wrist blazed. Not the gradual warmth of 5 weeks, not the quiet increment. It blazed gold and clear and certain through the fabric of my sleeve, lighting the doorframe, light enough that Marin looked up. She looked at my wrist, then at me. I did not say anything for a moment. I was simply present. That is the only way I can describe it. For the first time in 7 years, I was in a room without the managed distance between me and everything in it. And the room was a stone courtyard with 2 candles and an injured wolf and a woman who had come to Lochfin for another reason entirely. And I was there, and I knew. She's all right, Marin said. The shoulder is superficial. She'll need the dressing changed for a week, but she'll be fine. Thank you, I said. She looked at my wrist again. The light from the mark was steady and unmistakable. That's the bond, isn't it, she said, not a question. Yes, I said. Sierra told me some things, she said, about how it works here. She told me last week. A pause. I wondered if she was being, I thought perhaps she was hoping. She was hoping, I said. She was right, too. Marin sat back on her heels, her hands resting on her knees, looking at me with the direct, clear look that had not once been performed. Ash was breathing steadily between us. I came here for a season, she said. I didn't come here expecting this. I know, I said, neither did I. You've been alone a long time. 7 years, I said, since Kayla died. She was quiet for a moment. I've been alone 4 years, she said. Since Edrin, it's not the same as before. You learn to hold a different shape. Yes, I said, you do. We were quiet together for a moment. The way 2 people are quiet who know something real is in the room and are giving it the space it deserves. I don't know what I feel, she said. I want to be honest with you about that. I feel something. I've been aware of something for several weeks, but I don't know what to call it yet. You don't have to call it anything tonight, I said. The bond doesn't require urgency. It requires certainty. You're certain, she said. Yes, I said. She looked at me for a long moment. The candlelight was warm on her face, and the mark on my wrist cast its own light and ash breathed between us with the patience of a wolf who has decided to trust. "Come back in the morning," she said, "and we'll talk." "Yes," I said. I did not sleep that night. Not from anxiety, from the specific quality of wakefulness that comes when something that has been held still for a very long time has finally moved. And the movement is not painful, but is so complete that the body does not know what to do with the space it occupied. I lay in the Alpha's chamber and listened to the lake and felt the mark on my wrist, warm and steady and entirely certain, and thought about Kayla and about the 7 years and about the bargain I had made with my grief and what it had cost me, and what it had protected me from, and whether those were the same thing. I thought they had been the same thing for a long time. I thought they had stopped being the same thing somewhere in the past 5 weeks, in small increments, in eastern courtyards and early mornings and conversations about geology and the patience of lakes. In the morning, Marin was in the great hall with a cup of tea and the window facing the lake. She had the look of someone who had also not slept, but not from distress. I sat across from her. She looked at me for a moment. "I want to stay," she said. "For the rest of the season and after, I want to see what this is." She paused. "That's not a yes to everything, that's a yes to continuing." "That's exactly right," I said. "And you'll be patient with me." "I have been patient for 7 years," I said. "I find I am very good at it." Something moved in her face, the smile she had been almost showing for 5 weeks, now fully present, warm and real and entirely her own. "All right," she said. "The season's closing ceremony at Lochvin is held at the lake's edge, at the hour when the light comes flat and golden from the west and the water holds it like a mirror. The Hold's wolves gather. The senior council attends. It is a ceremony of continuation, of naming the season past and the season to come. I named Marin at the ceremony, not because the bond required it to be public. It did not. The bond does not require performance. I named her because the Hold's wolves had watched their alpha keep a managed distance for 7 years, and they deserved to see him come back. Sierra was in the front row. She had tears in her eyes, which she did not try to conceal, and Davin beside her had his arm around her with the solid quiet of a wolf who understands that some moments you simply witness. Marin stood beside me at the lake's edge in the golden light, and the Hold's wolves bent their heads, one by one, the way wolves do when something true has been recognized, not a performance of submission but an acknowledgement of what is real. Afterward, in the quiet, she looked at the lake. "It's patient," she said. "Yes," I said. "It waited for you." "It seemed so." She was quiet for a moment, watching the light change on the water, the way it does in the evening, slower, warmer, more willing to let itself be seen. "I came for a season," she said. "I know. I'm going to need to send word to the Western settlement," she said, "about my things." "The Hold Keeper can arrange that," I said. She looked at me, the smile again warm, real, entirely her own. "All right," she said. The lake held the last of the day's light the way it held everything, with the patience of something that has been here longer than any grief, longer than any distance, longer than any bargain made in a dark autumn and kept beyond its usefulness. It reflected what was there and let the rest sink. I had built on its shore because someone in my family knew that quality was useful to a governing line. I understand now that it was also waiting for a specific morning, for the light to come right, for the ground to thaw, for the standing stone to remember it was never a stone at all. The lake had always known. It simply had the patience to wait.